No, that's fine. That's a good question. Yes?
I have a question. You're basically saying that there's no chance of any of the stuff that you inject down coming back up. But then you caution everybody to have their water tested. So why should they have their water tested if there's no chance?
No,
It's already polluted.
The reason I suggested having water tested, because when we tested the water up there, we found that quite a bit of it was already polluted. I'm just offering that as a friendly suggestion. I mean, you can or cannot. I'm just saying that, you know,
well,
most people are under the impression they have a residential water well, it's just pristine spring water.
But you were talking about bacteria.
Yeah, right.
That's very different.
Not
Not E. coli. E. coli way worse than anything.
So well, you're going to be accepting flow back water from Marcel as well. And there's a lot of nasty stuff in it. And do you think that the baseline DEP water testing is adequate to protect people against the stuff you're going to be injecting?
Well, let me ask you this. If the baseline material constituents that they have you test for are things that make up the vast majority of production water, right? I mean, whether it's chlorides, I'm talking volume-wise.
Yeah.
Okay, so therefore, how would you have some strange constituent that is measured in micrograms per liter show up in your water without having these other constituents in there that make up the vast majority?
Well, some of them are, like BTEX chemicals, for example, very toxic, glutaraldehyde, ethylene glycol, which aren't part of the baseline testing and would require a higher tier of testing in order to have that done.
The analysis we have doesn't have any, the fluids
I know
we're
that.
looking at don't.
No,
we've
we have
tested
that
for
stuff,
that.
isn't it?
We've tested for that. We've done the analysis for that for the fluids coming in, and the resultant analysis shows none of those.
My point. Wait,
Where do they go?
I don't think they're used.
No, they are used. They're part of this. You guys are stimulation people.
Now here's my question for you. If you're, we say, I don't know, pick one of the ethylene glycol. Okay, and let's say that ethylene glycol makes up, I don't know, 0.1% of a fractal. Say, okay, well, there's some in this water that's coming back. Well, you're going to have to test for ethylene glycol if the majority of it is salt. If all of a sudden you have this huge volume of salt show up, you can assume that something else is there. That's why you're not required to test for 50 different constituents. Mike, I guess what I'm saying is, how would the ethylene glycol get there if there's no salt there?
Well, because it goes, you guys use it for the stimulation.
No, I'm talking
No,
about
we're talking about testing.
What about radioactive stuff?
Well, same thing. There's radioactivity all throughout the earth, right? Don't you have to have a
It's
radio
not
test?
normally in drinking water.
Well, that's right. It's not in the drinking water. So my point is, if you test what's the first thing you're going to notice? If there's a pollution incident in a residential water line, is the first thing you're going to notice radiation or salt?
Well, salt, but
what the testing program is designed around to do is typically what you want to test for are those things that come in higher concentrations, higher amounts, because they will show up first. And you want to catch the leading indicator, not the lagging indicator.
Well,
so what they want.
Some of those things, when people have their water tested like that, the DEP says, well, barium is naturally occurring. So,
it is.
And so it is naturally occurring. So that's one of the things with chloride is naturally occurring.
But not at 300,000 parts per million.
Well, I know.
No, that's not
But the radioactive stuff,
It's naturally occurring too.
Yeah, but it's not normally in water.
Well, that's right. But I guess what are you asking? You're saying that when we do residential water tests, we should test for a whole plethora of...
I think around wells you should.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because, for example, benzene is probably the most carcinogenic thing that's in there.
But,
At
but what's the most common source of benzene that you know
Welding.
of?
Well,
What else? Anyone more common?
I mean, it could be.
How many people live at a gas station?
Yeah.
Okay, so the
All the gas
see
stations does.
what
See how
the
you're running
program
your
is,
mouth
you
then.
gotta remember, the program is designed around our project, okay? If we just tested for benzene, and you happen to dump a gallon of gasoline out in your yard filling up the lawnmower and it was close to your water well, all of a sudden you got benzene, okay? No, nothing to do with us, but we only tested for benzene. Now we do that same test and we look for chloride, there's no chlorides. So all of a sudden we know, well, wait a minute, probably not coming out. The stuff we're putting down has 290,000 parts per million chlorides. So what you're trying to do, what the regulatory programs try to do, is they define guidelines to manage the operations, okay, control the operations, and prevent environmental, happenstance. And to do that, they monitor the operations and they provide testing programs.
I know.
Those,
But the thing is, if we don't baseline test your own water for that, they can come back and say, well, this was already in there. And that's the whole thing. That's, you have this basic tier 1 level water testing. We should be testing.
oh, so what you're saying is before we get started, test for this stuff. What's going to happen?
I mean, I'm talking about drinking water. I'm talking about you're asking people to get their water
Can you pay
tested
for
on a
testing
regular
for city
basis.
I just had the EPA priority pollutants test done on my injection. It's $4,800.
I know, it's expensive.
So it's and it's 11 pages long.
Not that long.
Well, mine is. I don't know. Maybe they don't.
Well, I'm just saying, if I were a property somewhere that had a water well that could be impacted by this, I would want to make sure that my water is as pure as it possibly could be because of the liability aspect. When people pump stuff down the ground and it may or may not find its way back up into somebody's water, that you should need to have a baseline so that you know that it wasn't there before.
Why don't you do your own
Well, yeah,
baseline?
I
Why should we?